Hello and welcome, I'm Ellie Richardson and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take it. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy emphasises that the United States must understand that as long as Russia continues its aggressive actions and killings, there will be no sufficient trust in diplomacy. The Justice Department has unredacted names like billionaire Les Wexner, assistant Leslie Groff and modelling agent Jean-Luc Brunel as Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators in a 2019 FBI document. President Trump has vowed to halt the opening of the Geordie Howe International Bridge connecting Detroit and Windsor unless Canada shares ownership and compensates the US for perceived trade imbalances. The White House has updated its fact sheet on the historic US-India trade deal, removing mentions of tariff reductions on certain pulses and softening language on India's purchase commitments. A mass shooting in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, leaves 10 people dead, including the suspect, with over 25 injured in attacks at a high school and a nearby home. Police found 6 victims inside Tumbler Ridge Secondary School. Indonesia readies up 8,000 troops for Board of Peace efforts in Gaza. The troops will form part of the international list of stabilization force under US President Donald Trump's Board of Peace. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has called for a firm response from the US and the international community to Israel's West Bank plans. He says these actions hinder peace efforts and violate international law. The gunman who opened fire at Pratan Kiwati School in Hatyai, Thailand, has been shot by the police. Over 3 people have been injured, while authorities are investigating the situation. And for your top story this hour, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has emphasised that the United States must understand that as long as Russia continues its aggressive actions and killings, there will be no sufficient trust in diplomacy. Furthermore, he added that security issues are paramount and every other issue must be addressed in conjunction with them. Separately, Ukraine's military confirmed that it struck a Lukoil oil refinery in Russia's Volgograd region. Meanwhile, according to the mayor of Lviv, air defense systems in Ukraine have been actively engaged in repelling Russian missile attacks on the Lviv region. We are now being joined by Glenn Grant, who's an ex-advisor to Defence Minister of Ukraine and geopolitical commentator, joining us from Latvia. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. Is Zelenskyy suggesting that diplomacy cannot succeed while active fighting continues on the ground?
I think it's more than that. I mean, he's making it very plain that Russia has to show some sign of willingness to actually engage in diplomacy, because at the moment all Russia is saying is basically, you've got to give up and give us the land that we want, and then there will be peace. But of course that's not acceptable to anybody, because the risk of that is just it's the loss of Ukraine. Zelenskyy is making this point clearly to America, that doesn't matter how much you talk to Russia, Russia has got to show us that they mean it, and that you have got to show us that you mean it with your security guarantees. You can't have security guarantees afterwards. We need to see them now to know that you're serious.
And what kind of security guarantees is Ukraine seeking before it can fully trust negotiations?
Well, I think they want to, they want to see that America is actually going to do what it says it's going to do. And at the moment, it keeps failing to do what it says it's going to do. It says it's going to give missiles, then it pulls back, and so forth. And there is nothing in the American actions at the moment that give Zelensky any cause for believing that Trump is actually serious about supporting Ukraine in at any stage of negotiations.
And how should the US interpret Ukraine's message that trust in diplomacy depends on Russia halting attacks?
Oh, I think they've made the point clearly enough and often enough. And the Russians have been told this many, many times, that they've got to do, they've got to show some sort of willingness, that they're actually, their intentions are genuine. And they're not showing, not only are they not showing that willingness, they're actually saying they're not willing to do this. They're making it very clear to America and to Ukraine that they intend to keep the war going. So I think that actually, all this peace stuff is actually stuff and nonsense. There is nothing real about it. It's just time wasting and energy wasting. Trump wants his Nobel Peace Prize, but he's going about it the wrong way.
And as we know, Russia and Ukraine, they've now had 2 rounds of talks with the United States. And last time we saw that prisoners of war got released. But can these meaningful negotiations and constant peace deal talks happen without a ceasefire? Because when these talks have been going on, Russia has been attacking security grids for Ukraine and killing many, many civilians. So can these negotiations happen without a ceasefire, or is a halt in violence essential?
No, I think a halt in violence is completely essential, because Russia has said it's not going to stop. So you have to believe them. And I mean, I go back on your comment there about meaningful talks. They're not meaningful. They're not meaningful at all. They're just straightforward. You give up, and Ukraine saying we're not going to give up our land, and quite right, they shouldn't do. So they're not meaningful. Meaningful talks will be when Europe and America actually put boots on the ground somewhere, or do something like take over the airspace from the river all the way through to Lviv. When something real happens, then we can say about meaningful talks. But at the moment, they're not.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere, as we will come back to you very shortly. Russia says it will continue to respect limits on deployed missiles and nuclear warheads under the New START treaty, but only if the United States does the same. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov made it clear that Moscow will not breach the caps unless Washington moves first. He said Russia is closely monitoring US military activity and the overall strategic situation every day. The treaty expired last week, leaving both countries without binding nuclear constraints for the first time in decades. Let's listen in to the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov.
В дальнейшем добровольном соблюдении сторонами по договору о стратегических наступательных вооружений, заложенных в нем центральных количественных ограничений, была оставлена без официального ответа американской стороной. Исходим из того, что этот мораторий с нашей стороны, который был объявлен президентом, он сохраняется, но только до тех пор, пока США также не будут превышать упомянутые лимиты. И в целом будем действовать ответственно, взвешенно, на основе анализа военной политики США, мы этот анализ ведем повседневно, и анализа общей обстановки в стратегии.
We are now being joined by Glenn Grant. Again, thank you for joining us back here. What practical meaning does Russia's pledge have if the New START treaty has already expired and formal verification mechanisms are no longer in place?
I don't think they've got any meaning whatsoever except bluff, because it's fairly well known that a large amount of the Russian nuclear arsenal is actually rusted and uh, has not been maintained properly for years, and that what is there, many of the key parts have been stolen and sold. So I think that Russia is playing an extremely serious bluff game with America, but the Americans know this, and therefore the ball is in in Russia's court to actually to do something. I think the Americans will just ignore what Lavrov is saying.
And like you just said, how might this absence of a renewed arms control agreement affect global strategic stability between the US and Russia?
Well, I think the reality is at the moment that the strength is on the American side by a huge amount. I mean, apart from its apart from its nuclear missiles, of course, it's got submarines, it's got a lot of nuclear bombers. So it could actually overwhelm Russia. And nobody wants a nuclear war because, of course, one Russian missile on New York or one on Washington would make a serious mess to the country. So nobody wants this to happen. But it's not just a thing between Russia and America. You have to remember that these treaties are things that, to a degree, other countries have respected. And if there is no longer any treaty between you can call them the big two, Russia and America, then it pretty much means that other countries see that the gloves are off and anybody can and should go for nuclear weapons if they actually want some sort of defense.
And what risks does the expiration of these legally binding limits pose for other nuclear powers, including places like China?
That's a good question. I mean, because the other powers, of course, have not been in any of these agreements, and I think that America is looking, if it's going to have a new agreement, that it will want it with China and Russia, not just Russia. And so, in a way, it had to finish one agreement and then start again. So I think in the coming months, we will see negotiations between the US and China taking place over the same sort of things as the original START talks, with Russia maybe even being just a bit player now, because they simply have not kept up to date.
Mm. And like you just said, last week, Trump was saying that he wanted China in on the agreement as well for this new START treaty. China then said no, they don't want to be a part of it. Do you think do you think Trump would sign another agreement without China, or do you think he's going to keep pushing for China to join as well?
No, I think he's going to keep pushing to join with China because China, he doesn't want an agreement with Russia that limits him if China then goes past the American missile size. So Russia's not going to do anything. Come on, they've got no money. They can't even afford to pay soldiers on the front line. So they're not about to go into any great nuclear race at all. So you're basically looking at US and China now as the two big ones. And Trump won't take no for an answer with this. He'll just keep going. He'll probably put the tariffs up to 1,000,000% or something. But he needs now an agreement with China, not with Russia.
Mm. Thank you so much, Glenn Grant, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has called for a firm response from the United States and the international community over Israel's plan to further tighten its control over the occupied West Bank. While in Oslo, Abbas has discussed the issue with Norwegian Prime Minister Johannes Gahr Støre. Abbas has also addressed concerns about Israeli settler violence and Israel's decision to freeze $4 billion meant for the Palestinian people. Meanwhile, Israel is already facing international criticism over its new measures regarding West Bank. This includes a decision made by Israel's Security Cabinet, which allows Israelis to directly purchase land from Palestinians in the West Bank. Previously, settlers could only buy homes through registered companies. The new measures also transfer authority for construction in the city of Hebron from the Palestinian Authority to Israel. The European Union has condemned these actions, calling them, quote, another step in the wrong direction. Moreover, Germany has said that Israel's new plans for West shows its intentions for de-factionization of West Bank. We are now being joined by Yossi Kupawasa, who is an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What exactly is Israel's West Bank plan? And is it causing Abbas to demand a strong international response? What is Israel trying to do here?
Well, there are two parts of this question. First of all, thank you for having me. There are two parts of this question. First of all, what is the plan? And secondly, what is behind the Abbas reaction? Well, let's start with the second one. Abbas is against anything that Israel does. It doesn't matter what we do, he's always against it. And so he's not any way to judge whether we are in the right direction or the wrong direction. He's actually the person who finances salaries to the terrorists to carry out terror attacks against us, and then complains that we do not give him money to pay the salaries to the terrorists to kill us. That's very strange, but this is Chairman Abbas, unfortunately. Regarding our policy in the Judea and Samaria areas that you call the West Bank, we are regarding these areas as disputed lands between us and the Palestinians. And we are waiting for the time when we are able to conduct negotiations with the Palestinians about the fate of these territories. These negotiations started with the conclusion of the Oslo agreements. And ever since then, we didn't manage to find a solution. There were all kinds of proposals what to do with them. And we claim that part of them should be a part of Israel in the future, and both for security reasons and for national reasons. And the Palestinians don't want to give up any piece of this disputed land, and they are not ready to reach any agreement that would include the recognition in Israel as a state of the Jewish people. And we are stuck. Unfortunately, we are stuck. And while we are stuck, people live there, and there's a need to make their life more reasonable. And that's the series of decisions that Israel took recently are supposed to make these lives more reasonable. That's exactly the purpose of that, so that people can buy land in order to build housing, and that can enjoy the same conditions as Israeli citizens. Those Israelis that live in these territories will be able to enjoy the same attitude that every Israeli citizen gets, without changing in any way the sovereignty of over the land, without annexing any part of it. This is the last couple of decisions taken.
And how could the US respond? And what would that mean for its role as mediator between Israel and Palestinians?
You are muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry. Hopefully you can hear me now. How could the US respond, and what would that mean for its role as a mediator between Israel and the Palestinians?
Okay.
Sorry, I'll ask you again. How could the US respond, and what would that mean for its role as mediator between Israel and Palestinians? Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas has called for a firm response from the United States and the international community over Israel's plan to further tighten its control over the occupied West Bank. While in Oslo, Abbas has discussed the issue with Norwegian Prime Minister Johannes Gahr Støre. Abbas has also addressed concerns about Israeli settler violence and Israel's decision to freeze $4 billion meant for the Palestinian people. Meanwhile, Israel is already facing international criticism over its new measures regarding West Bank. This includes a decision made by Israel's Security Cabinet, which allows Israelis to directly purchase land from Palestinians in the West Bank. Previously, settlers could only buy homes through registered companies. The new measures also transfer authority for construction in the city. We are now being joined by Yussi Kapawasa. Thank you for joining us back here, and sorry about the little technical difficulty that happened. How could the US respond, and what would that mean for its role as a mediator between Israel and the Palestinians?
Well, the US has clarified that they are against the idea of Israeli annexation of these territories, and we have no intention to annex these territories. So the move that we have done is merely reflecting our intention to make the life of people living in these territories more reasonable and more like the people living in Israel itself, in the sense of a private capability to own land and to buy new lands for housing and construction. That was the main idea behind it. The territories themselves remain disputed areas between us and the Palestinians. And once there is going to be a Palestinian that is ready, that we shall consider, or that he will consider readiness, consider himself ready to discuss this matter, we shall be able to discuss it. And there were many attempts throughout the years to find a solution. All of them failed. And right now, nobody really expects any progress in this respect. So there is a need to take measures so that the people living there will have the ability to live a reasonable life and to own land that they live in, and so on and so forth. This is the steps. These are the steps we have taken, and this is what they reflect. Of course, President Abbas is very upset, but he's upset with everything that we are doing, and he's upset with the fact that we do not give him monies that he will be able to use in order to pay salaries to the terrorists to try to kill us. And nevertheless, he is paying them with the little money he does have. He uses that in order to pay for slayers, we call it. And Israel, of course, has to take measures to clarify that it is not ready to pay people to kill Israelis. That is not going to happen.
Thank you so much, Yusuf, for joining us here today on NewsX World. The gunman who had taken an unknown number of students and teachers hostage at Prathan Kiwat School in Hat Yai in Thailand has been shot. According to reports, 3 people have been injured at the attacker after he opened fire. Authorities have not yet confirmed the total number of hostages, and the police is still investigating the reasons and cause behind the threat. Meanwhile, emergency teams are on the scene with a large security operation underway to ensure the safety of those involved. The situation is still developing, and law enforcement has urged the public to stay clear of the area to allow for ongoing efforts. The gunman who had taken an unknown number of students and teachers hostage at Prathan Kiwat School in Hat Yai in Thailand has been shot. According to reports, 3 people have been injured by the attacker after he opened fire. Authorities have not yet confirmed the total number of hostages, and the police is still investigating the reasons and cause behind the threat. Meanwhile, emergency teams are on the scene with a large security operation underway to ensure the safety of those involved. The situation is still developing, and law enforcement has urged the public to stay clear of the area to allow for ongoing efforts. The gunman, who had taken an unknown number of students and teachers hostage at Prathan Kiwat's school in Hat Yai in Thailand, has been shot. According to reports, 3 people have been injured by the attacker after he opened fire. Authorities have not yet confirmed the total number of hostages, and the police is still investigating the reasons of the cause and the cause behind the threat. Meanwhile, emergency teams are on the scene with a large security operation underway to ensure the safety of those involved. The situation is still developing, and law enforcement has urged the public to stay clear of the area to allow for ongoing efforts. We are now being joined by Jingjae, who's a local teacher in Thailand. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. What do we know what happened at the school, and how did the shooter enter? How many people were hurt overall, and how was the situation resolved?
Okay, I'm Jing Jai. I saw the news about the situation that goes after school. A young man went to the school and with a gun, and they shot a student and a principal of the school. So the principal is has a harm injury, and the student and the 2 students also. And the gunner he's just a young man, 17 years old, and he is a drug. He is drug. And he just left from the hospital, from rehab in the hospital. And I think because he know that the teacher in the school hit his younger sister, so he was angry, and he went to the school directly and shooting whatever they see. And I didn't see the official statement from the police bureau or the police in Hat Yai yet, but I see province public relation and the Songkhla.
Sorry, Jingjae, we are running out of time, but thank you for talking to us today on NewsX World. The European Union is set to introduce new public procurement rules that will prioritise low-carbon and EU-made products. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen highlighted the importance of reducing reliance on subsidised foreign goods and supporting European industries. She has emphasised that public buyers often have to settle for lower quality foreign alternatives, leaving high quality European products unutilised. These new Procurement rules will form a key part of the Industrial Acceleration Act, expected to be presented later this month. Furthermore, this initiative reflects the EU's ongoing commitment to bolstering its internal market and promoting sustainability. That's all we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.